Welcome to Kiffin's Keep, an intellectual resource for the pillar and buttress of the truth, which is the church. This is a project of the London Lyceum, which is all about serious thinking for a serious church. I'm Jordan Stepaniak, president of the London Lyceum and host of Kiffin's Keep. And as always, I'm excited to be here today. Today, I plan on covering a couple of topics related to the philosophy of mind in general. It's not going to be a complete overview, but it's going to be a little bit about taxonomies and what counts as dualist, what counts as physicalist, etc., and if hylomorphism is a legitimate category or not. And for you loyal listeners, I'm going to be covering a couple of things towards the end, some bonus material or information, so stick around if that's you. Or if you're interested, stick around too. Maybe you'll become a loyal viewer like the rest of the 3 people who watch loyally. Before I get started, reminder, like the video if you enjoyed the content, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything, and then comment with questions, thoughts, or ideas. I love your feedback. And if you have questions that you'd like me to address, you can drop a note at the website, thelondonlyceum.com/kiffins-keep. And right there, you've got a little place to do it. Of course, you could always just drop a comment on YouTube. That's fine too. Now, for the topic, like I said, I want to talk a little bit about the philosophy of mind as it relates to dualism, physicalism, and potentially hylomorphism. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm reading a book right here called Crowned with Glory and Honor. And so far, I do not like it. But that being said, I'm only 26 pages in, so take that for what it's worth. It probably gets better. It probably gets much better. But I take issue with the taxonomy of the various views of the human person. The ontology of human persons, I think, is very insufficient in this book. It's not just this book, though. It's a problem I see in several other segments, and some of that is just we agree to disagree on various things. So, for example, I was reading Tim Paul's. He has an essay where he's using other people's terms, and he gives you, if you mean this by substance dualism, then it's not an appropriate term, but if you mean this by it, then it's okay. And so he will be fine using it as long as it's couched in this particular way. I think it creates more confusion than it does help. So a couple of quotes from this book that gets me started. So he says, Michael Wilkinson says this, that the church operated with a prevailing assumption that man is made of 2 distinct and separable components or substances, end quote. He also says, quote, some form of substance dualism became the default teaching of the church, end quote. And throughout this, he basically pits physicalism versus substance dualism as the sort of exhaustive options. He gives some sort of lightweight substance dualism accounts, but for all intents and purposes, it's either substance dualism or physicalism, and the church has only had substance dualism. The way he really defines substance dualism is along the lines of a countdown. It's the number of substances. He gives other things. So let's see, where is it? Yeah, human beings have both physical and mental aspects. Okay, great. The mental and physical aspects are equally fundamental. Well, I don't know what fundamental means. He doesn't really give a clear definition of it, but he's a theologian, so I'll let it pass. And then finally, this is the distinctive thing that's supposed to be necessary and sufficient in my mind. The mental and physical aspects are ontologically distinct and functionally interdependent. So that doesn't make a lot of sense, except when you read the soul and the body are ontologically separate and separable substances. That's the key right there. So for Wilkinson, to be a substance dualist is to actually legitimately be a substance dualist. There are 2 ontologically distinct and separable substances, a body and a soul. These are 2 substances in themselves. And then you have physicalism. So if it's going to have one substance, the material body, and that's it. That's going to be exhausted by that. Of course, there are variations of physicalism of how that's all cashed out. But for all intents and purposes, that's what Wilkinson's got going on here. But that doesn't exhaust the various options. There is a sort of like hybrid middle view there in hylomorphism that I think at one point sort of just calls it that's substance dualism. But it's not. It's not substance dualism, especially depending on what version of hylomorphism you're going to accept. And so for me, I think it's fine to have a broad category of sort of I would prefer the terminology of monism versus just a generic vanilla dualism when you come to respect to things. Monism would be there's one sort of stuff, whether that's material or whether that's immaterial, because you have idealism, not as popular today, but it's still there. And then you have dualism, which there's two sorts of stuff, material and immaterial, right? But from that, I would say that there are three primary families of views and not just two families of views when it comes to the ontology of human persons. You have the substance dualism that's, yes, like Platonic, Cartesian, all those different things where you have two substances where the personal identity is immaterial. And here I have a definition, let me find it, from J.P. Moreland and Brandon Rickbaugh's new book on substance dualism. They say substance dualism basically requires at least five things, or at least six things. So the human person is comprised of soul and body. Okay. The soul is an immaterial substance. Okay. The body is a physical entity. Got it. The human person can exist without the body. Got it. Mental life is possessed and unified by the soul, and the soul is fundamental. So here they say, by fundamental, they mean irreducible. Only the soul is fundamental, not the body. The body is not fundamental. So that's interesting. So Wilkinson relies on Mark Cortez to a significant degree to cash out his ontology, which I love Mark, but if you want to do ontology of human persons, you have to actually interact with something important literature and to show an awareness of the various categories at play. I don't feel like he's doing that. So maybe what he does with that, theologically speaking, might be useful. But from a philosophical perspective and from a categorization, just general, like here are the different options, not super helpful. So that's the substance dualism. Then you have this dualism that could be variously described. There's a broad bucket here, depending on how you think about dualism, because you can have a dualism respecting substances, a dualism respecting parts. So maybe you're a composite of a body and soul, an immaterial and a material entity, or maybe it's just that a dualism of properties, where you're wholly a physical or an immaterial thing, and yet you instantiate two different sorts of properties, material and immaterial. I'm going to just go with the parts. Well, I guess let's do, if the middle view is just a generic sort of like neo-Aristotelian dualism, I would probably define dualism as dualism of properties here. So you would have more like along the lines of substance dualism, things like emergent dualism, where you're a wholly physical thing, but when things are adequately sophisticated or whatever it is, out emerges another distinct substance called the soul. Then you have hylomorphism, where you have these sort of two metaphysical constituents. I think that's the proper terminology for it, of the substantial form and prime matter. You put them together, and you have a composite individual, a single substance, not two substances. Not he keeps saying number of substances is the difference between physicalism and substance dualism. Well, if that's the case, then hylomorphism is a physicalist theory. Now, some people would categorize it as such, and some people would define it in such a way that it does count as a physicalist theory. And by the way, I use physicalism and materialism interchangeably. I think the terms mean the same thing. I'm not trying to make a distinction between those two things. So hylomorphism, emergent dualism. If neo-Aristotelian dualism is along property lines, I would say non-reductive materialism also fits, since you're going to instantiate immaterial properties. Same thing with constitutionalism. And then you have the generic physicalism or materialism, where you're identical to a physical object. Now, where animalism fits in that, probably neo-Aristotelian dualism, I think. But if you want to, if you want to go along parts, then hylomorphism is a dualism of parts, because you have two different parts, right? So that, in my mind, is an important distinction to be made between these various views. And substance dualism, just historically speaking, has not been the only view or the dominant view for significant centuries of time. You are talking Aristotelian versions of hylomorphism as the dominant view and the church held position view. It's codified. I mean, you have the Roman Catholic Church. If you've read any of their material, they've codified hylomorphism. So that is the church's position. If you are a Roman, if you're a Roman papist, right? Now, if you're Protestant, then you have a little bit more flexibility. Though, here's the thing with Protestantism. If you want to go to some older confessions, so like the Second London Confession or the Westminster Confession, they both give what it appears to be a strongly substance dualist flavor. And it doesn't come on the creation of human persons or the constitution of them or anything. It actually comes there at the resurrection chapter, which, if you ever want to know what does somebody actually really think about how a human ontology, ask them about death. What happens at death? And that will give you an answer of whether they're actually a substance dualist or not. And a lot of people will claim to not be substance dualists, but then you ask them about death, and suddenly they are substance dualists. So here we go. This is chapter 31, paragraph 1. The bodies of men after death return to dust and see corruption, but their souls, which never die nor sleep, having an immortal subsistence, immediately return to God who gave them the soul. And it goes on. That definitely gives a strongly substance dualist flavor. I don't think you have to be a substance dualist based upon that clause. You can be a highly amorphist and make sense of it depending on how you think of it. If you're a corruptionist or a survivalist, and there could be a little bit of backstory, behind the scenes retelling of that to kind of put it together. But hylomorphism is definitely the standard view among the medieval scholastics and to a great number of reformed scholastics. Now, if you read somebody like Calvin, he's a pretty generic substance dualist. And so there are definitely substance dualists in the tradition, no doubt about it. But to think that hylomorphism is not even a relevant option, or to think that it is identical to substance dualism, is quite silly. It's not true. And so what I've tried to do here in this short little mini video is give you a little bit of an introduction to the taxonomy of options on the table in the philosophy of mind when it comes to human ontology. Philosophy of mind in general has much more to talk about. There's all sorts of different topics in it. Maybe I'll do an episode on what is the philosophy of mind. But if we want to think about human ontology, what are we made up of? To me, there are three families of views, like I said: substance dualism, some sort of neo-Aristotelian dualism, and then a generic materialism of sorts. And there's different views within each of those that kind of explain how it works out. But really, the way I think of it is you have two distinct separable substances, right? Which is fine. That is what substance dualism is. But then you have that middle version that is not two substances. It's one substance, and it either has two metaphysical constituents as parts, or it has two. It instantiates both sorts of properties. The mental properties are something else, and then you would have the materialism, or just any. I guess monism is probably the proper term for it, where it's either materialism or idealism of some sort. So hopefully that's helpful. Sometimes I don't always know what I want to talk about, but this one irked me a little bit, and I thought, let me talk about this. This is something I haven't talked about a ton in the past, and I think it's useful, and it's a little bit of part of my dissertation. So if you think it doesn't make sense, then let me know before I submit, so I don't get in trouble getting totally roasted on that. So now, a couple of things I wanted to cover here before we close up shop. I don't know how long this will take. It might take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Who knows? We'll see. If you're a loyal viewer, you'll have made it this far, and you will hit the like button, and you will make sure you have subscribed, because if you haven't subscribed, then that's very sad. So a couple of things to mention. Number one, I wrote an essay on confessionalism 2 weeks ago, maybe. And it was in critique of Malcolm Yarnell and Steve McKinnon. A friendly critique. I know Steve, and I think he's awesome. He's great. I've learned a lot from him. I'm excited to learn from him in the future. Just traditional sort of academic discussion and debate, saying, I think you're wrong here. I'm teaching a course on Baptist confessions right now, and they had invoked B.H. Carroll, and I thought, this isn't B.H. Carroll. We just read B.H. Carroll last week in class, and he seems to say something different. So I write an essay saying, I think B.H. Carroll's a right hero or champion of confessionalism. I think you got it wrong a little bit here. Well, that actually stirred up some opportunity for further debate. So I think we might have some continued discussions on this, which I'm excited about. So as I find out more, maybe I'll share more with you. Just keep in touch on that if you're interested. Another thing is, I did a video recently on some top reasons to be a Baptist, and I gave, I guess, my several reasons for it. Well, I have somebody who is a Barely Protestant, is their name, did a 90-minute reply to my Baptist theology video, which is impressive in a feat, because I think my video is like 15 minutes. So kudos on that. I plan on watching the whole thing, and if it's worthwhile, maybe I'll engage it. I'm guessing there's just some simple misunderstanding of what it means to be a Baptist and what it means for at least my understanding of Baptist, which is probably a little bit thinner some others. So I'm going to accept what I would consider irregular baptisms as valid. Those infant baptisms, I accept them as valid, though irregular or improper. So that's going to be a distinction that a lot of Baptists don't make, and therefore it's probably going to be an assumption that I don't make that, because they're going to say, well, you just got 1,500 years of people not being baptized. And I was like, well, no, you just do your homework first. Watch the video and watch the other videos I've done, and you realize that's the case. So if it's worthwhile, maybe I'll do a recording. Let me know if you think it's worthwhile. I need to watch it first. So maybe it really is, and I need to do it. A couple of other things. My videos may be a little bit sporadic over the next 2 months. Got a couple of things coming up. Finishing the dissertation, finally, hopefully. I've been putting it off forever, and I need to get it done. We've got 2 journal issues coming out with our journal at the London Lyceum. Very, very excited about them. That means I'm typesetting them and proofing them and doing all that and getting them published and ready to go and shipped off in places. A lot of work goes into that to make sure that we have the highest quality standards on those volumes. You can't, a lot of journals these days, if they don't, some of them don't do peer review, and if they do peer review, they do it poorly. They don't get the experts in the areas, and then they don't let people make the proper sort of feedback, well, or adjustments to their essays. We do a significant level of peer review on all these essays, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. But excited about that, because we also have book proposals in the works that we're working on for Hanover Press. Super excited about them. We got some really cool ones coming in the door. So we'll see where those lead, if they get approved by the board and if they get moving forward. If you didn't know, we've got a really exciting volume that'll be coming out this fall on advice for Christian philosophers. I mean, it's got 20 of the best Christian philosophers in the world. It's really incredible, the volume that is being put together. Chris Woznicki has spearheaded that and has done a tremendous job. He's going to edit and as well as contribute a chapter to it. It's going to be awesome. Got some of the biggest names, some of the best names. Really, really cool stuff that we're doing with Hanover Press. If you're interested in supporting the work there financially, go to our website and you can donate there. All the support you can bring and provide is really, really helpful, as we need funds in order to pay for the various aspects of the book process, of the peer review, of the cover designs, and of all those things do cost money. And as we're beginning and starting out, it requires a significant amount of capital investment from just loyal people like you and me who believe in the mission and believe in the work and want to support it. So encourage you to do that. We've got more stuff coming up with the London Lyceum here soon, which I'm excited about. And I plan to cover a couple of topics here. I've been asked a number of times to do a video on Eastern Orthodoxy and why it's wrong, because it is. And I plan to do that here in the future. And all you commenters who are Eastern Orthodox, you can drop your hate comments below. I appreciate and love you, despite you being totally wrong. You should affirm the Filioque clause and more. And yeah, that'll be it for now. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully this is useful in some sense. I appreciate you all hanging out with me. And if you want me to talk about other things, let me know. So those are some of the, I guess that's one of the things that's on my mind. I probably plan to do an episode on a couple of other related topics, like my top theologians and what is classical theism. I plan to do that at some point, because I've got a book coming out at some point on that. But I want to time it right so people will actually buy the book and read it. So I'm thinking about when do I want to release that. So let me know what you guys think. Give me some thoughts. Give me some feedback. Tell me what you want me to talk about, and I'd be happy to do it. Sorry for the weird jumpiness in the video today. I don't know what's going on there. I keep seeing it kind of like pause and stuff. So hopefully that wasn't too distracting. I appreciate you hanging out the whole time. Anyway, thanks for everybody tuning in to Kiffin Skeet, and I look forward to speaking with you all soon.